Honourable Tau Henare.
Mr Speaker, I want to start by saying, giving my congratulations to the Select Committee and also to our chairperson, the Honourable John Carter, who has done a sterling job in keeping the committee together, keeping the committee on track, and getting all of us to be part of a democratic process.
I am,
Mr Speaker. But I also want to make an apology, sir, and get this off my chest. It's been worrying me for some time. No. Not that one. Not that one. I know I've got a list of them in here somewhere. But, Mr Speaker, I want to apologise to the Country Women's Institute, sir, because I took their name in vain. When there was a protest outside the Select Committee organised by none other than the new candidate for Te Aratu, Phil Twyford, Mr Speaker, I referred to that as nothing more than a meeting of the Country Women's Institute. And so I want to apologise to those good ladies of the Country Women's Institute, sir. In fact, they were nothing more than a ragtag bunch of old lefties from the 70s and 80s, Mr Speaker, who haven't moved on, They haven't moved on, and they were looking for that last opportunity, Mr Speaker, to go and protest at something. And you know, sir, we've heard from... I've always thought that the first speech by an opposition member and where we are today in the report back in the second reading of a speech would have been one of verve, one of high quality, one of setting out what the opposition would have done given the faint opportunity of being on the Treasury benches, sir. But all we heard, sir, was a rambling speech by one of the old war horses of the Labour Party. And I sort of feel sorry. I sort of feel sorry for that speech, because it should have been by one of the younger members, one of the more onto it members, like maybe William Seal, who has lived his whole life, sir, in Otara, gone to my alma mater, Hillary College, sir. It would have been a statement by the new Labour Party that this is where we are headed. But all we got, sir, was a disjointed, wobbly old speech, Mr Speaker. I tell you what, Mr Speaker, they want me to talk about the bill. What is there to talk about? What is there to talk about? Most people in Auckland want this thing to happen. Most people want one mayor. Most people want to go. Most people want to go to a place where they get their resource consent in one place, not umpteen dozen places. Most people wanted to have a say about CCOs, and they can have a say, and they can turn up to the meetings of the CCOs and have their say. Mr Speaker, if there were so many people opposed to this, there would have been thousands upon thousands of people marching in the street. And all Phil Twyford could organise was an ambulance and 30 or 40 outdated protesters from the Springbok tour, from the Vietnam War, Mr Speaker. That's all he could organise, Mr Speaker. I want to take my hat off to one of my foes in a lot of discussions we've had over the last few years about a few issues, Mr Rodney Hyde, the Honourable Rodney Hyde. Because he did listen to the Select Committee. He did listen to not all, but most of our suggestions, Mr Speaker. So I congratulate the Minister on his job and on his stewardship of the process. I want to, while I've got the time, sir, mention a letter from somebody who was opposed to the original Super City concept, sir. And while I don't want to read out the whole letter, I want to concentrate on 2 paragraphs. And I quote, "The ravings of the merchants of fear since the government's plans were announced make it obvious that any drawn-out reform process would have led to an extremely chaotic and costly hiatus, to the total detriment of all Aucklanders, especially ratepayers." And I want to concentrate on that while I've got a bit of time, Sue. You know, we've heard from the opposition that the process has been far too fast, far too rushed. Let me tell you, sir, that if this process had gone on any longer, if this process had been drawn out like the opposition wanted it to, sir, there would be nothing moving in Auckland. Nothing moving in Auckland. And Auckland is, by far and away, the largest economy in this country, and it's time that this House recognise that if we want this country to go ahead, we've got to make sure that Auckland is moving. You know, we can talk about the rural areas, we can talk about the provincial areas, we can talk about the other cities. And I love New Zealand, I love all cities in New Zealand. But if we don't get Auckland right, you can kiss goodbye to every other city making progress. And I know that sounds very parochial, sir, being a born and bred Aucklander. But let me tell you, sir, if it doesn't happen, this country faces a very, very uncertain future. So I want to go to the second paragraph of the letter, and I quote, "I believe that with this final major piece of legislation, it should be obvious to everyone that the future governance of Auckland will rest in the hands of people elected by and answerable to the residents and ratepayers of Auckland." Mr. Speaker, the diatribe that we hear from Mr. Wobbly Man before, sir, is nothing more than a distraction. It's nothing more. It's nothing more than you've got no answer. I'm sorry, not you, but they have no answer, Mr. Speaker. Well, at least somebody is. Carmel Cipollone, new member of for Waitakere, living in the residence. No, a new resident living in Waitakere. I apologise to my colleague. The Honourable Paula Bennett, who has that seat for some time to come. But, sir, I do want to say, sir, this. If there were... let's talk about the bill. People want it. People want one mayor. People want one mayor. People want a city unified. A unified city. Not, and I just want to, I do want to end on this lovely quote by Mr. Wobbly. How is it that you can chop something into one piece? How is it? That's the quote. That's a quote from George Hawkins. He accused us of wanting to chop Auckland into one piece. Now, I know I only got School C on my second try, and I know I may not be the brightest cookie in the jar, sir, but when I was in science and when I was in mathematics, sometimes I knew that when you chop something, it was into pieces. And I just want to say to the magician from Manurewa, is how on earth can you chop something into one? What we are doing and what...
I think...
Point of order, Carmel Cipollone.
I'm a new member and I know he's near the end of his speech, but I just want to clarify something with you. I think twice in the last minute and a half he's referred to the honourable member from Manurewa with 2 different names that Mr Hawkins doesn't use in the House. I think he's used... what were the names? Mr Wobbly Man and something else. Thank you.
Yes, people should be referred to directly and personally by the proper name. However, I could have stopped the member, but I saw the member concerned who was here in the House, and had he felt that he was going to take objection, it was up to him to take objection. I want to say that it's normal for members to take objection up on their own particular case, and I let it go at that. But I say to the member, speaking, all members are honourable members, and it should be referred to as such. Call the Honourable Tauhine.
Sir, I apologise and I withdraw.